Now, are QR codes a bit of a flash in the pan, or are they actually around for the long term? Now, that's obviously a question you're going to be asking yourself. Is this something that's worth your while selling to your customers? Or is this something that quite simply isn't going to go anywhere, it's a bit of a gimmick, and give it sort of 6 months to a year, no one's going to be interested in anyway? Well, QR codes have actually been around for a good few years now. They really have. And with the wider availability of smartphones now, they're becoming more and more popular. You'll find them on the back of washing powder, in magazines, in newspapers, on billboards. I mean, they've even been in, major city centres like Times Square. They've had it on there where people have been urged to scan a QR code to be taken through to a petition and sign a petition. So they reckon that something like 50% of people now have a smartphone, which obviously means that there's a large percentage of people that you could potentially market to now. But it's becoming more and more popular, and it's a good time now for you to jump into this, because it's not only in the US of A where it's really, really popular. It's becoming popular pretty much across the globe. Everyone in sort of all countries, particularly sort of some of the developing countries, are seeing QR codes really start to take off as they embrace the technology and realise just how useful it is. The ownership of smartphones is becoming more and more common, because pretty much every phone you buy these days, pretty much it is a smartphone, isn't it? If you think about it, every phone, most of the phones have the capability to take pictures, etc., etc. There's very few now that don't have that functionality built in, and most of them now are sort of heading into the sort of BlackBerry, iPhone, Android type territory, where they are smartphones. They're very good at what they do, and people can use QR codes on them. But one of the issues in the past has been that QR codes, well, perhaps they only appeal to sort of the younger generation. But more and more people are owning smartphones. My mother's in the 60s. She owns a smartphone. She hasn't worked out what QR codes are yet, but she certainly owns a smartphone and is more than happy to use it. And you're finding that the age range is becoming broader as the older generation are using smartphones because they want to be able to keep in touch with their grandchildren and children. So it's becoming an awful lot more popular and acceptable. We're finding that more and more people are now using smartphones, which means obviously that the target market is a lot broader. You're not just going to have to go and find companies that appeal to under 20s in order to find people that own smartphones. There's a lot wider age range now. But with the sort of current global economy, which frankly is dreadful, you think about the number of companies that are shutting down, the companies that are struggling to make a profit. They're looking for a good edge, something that is going to help them to get ahead of the competition. And QR codes are something that can really, really help them. They're still not quite common enough to be, taken for granted, but they're still a little bit unusual. So people will often see QR codes and be curious about them because they aren't something that they're familiar with. And they're a great way to help maximize your business. As we talked about in the previous video, you can use QR codes to get people who have bought your product or service to leave reviews. You can then use these reviews to help you make more sales online, because people will quite simply go to your Google Places or your website or wherever. They'll find reviews of your business and they'll be excited and they will click on them and off they go. You can offer discounts through them for your advertising. You can track your advertising a lot better. You can really get an instant response to your advertising, because people aren't going to have to sit there and try and remember a website address and then wait till they're conveniently sat in front of a computer to do something with it. Because let's face it, number of times I've seen an advert somewhere and thought, oh, that looks really, really interesting. I haven't had a pen and paper with me or anything I could write on, and I've tried desperately to remember the URL, But then a couple of hours later, when I've got back to a desk, I can sit down and think about it. I sit down and realise, well, actually, I can't remember the website address. I can't remember where it was. So, oh dear, whoops, they've just lost me. So it really is going to help people to maximise the effectiveness of their advertising. So, you know, if you think about it, instead of having people wandering off and having completely forgotten what the website address that you wanted them to go to was, they've got instant access to it. They know exactly where it is. They can go then and there. You know, you can put your contact details into their phone if it's a V card. So, you know, if they were looking for a plumber, you know, the plumber can have their have the plumber's details put straight into the potential customer's phone, which means that all the customer has to do is go click on their phone and they can call the plumber. Yeah, they might not do something today, but you know, you might find that in a couple of weeks' time when they need someone, they actually call that person. So it is very, very useful, this, because it is going to give people a bit of an edge. Yeah, mobile commerce is becoming much more acceptable. People are starting to buy things on their mobile phones. They're finding it, you know, it's a lot more acceptable for people to use mobile phones for things like purchases, making money, and so on and so forth. You know, people are integrating their mobile phones with PayPal. I have a PayPal application on my BlackBerry, and on a number of occasions I've been on the road and I've needed to make a payment to an outsourcer or something like that, and I've been able to do that very, very easily from my mobile phone. So, you know, I've been able to make a payment, and it's incredibly useful to be able to do it. So, you know, people are finding this is becoming a lot more acceptable nowadays. It's not something where people go, well, I wouldn't use a mobile phone for that. People are trusting it a lot more than they ever did in the past. And more websites are becoming mobile phone friendly. People are realizing that a large percentage of the customer base are visiting websites from their mobile phone, which means that they need to have a website that can be easily viewed on the mobile phone. And of course, yeah, a lot of websites just aren't. You know, a lot of websites are pretty much useless on the mobile phone. So more and more companies are realizing that it's very important for them to you know, to have sites that are mobile friendly and are sites that people can, you know, enjoy and visit and view on their mobile phone. And they're finding that they're making sales. People will scan a QR code when they see an advert or they're walking past somewhere, have a look at it on their phone, and then they will stop and go in, things like that. Or they'll sign up to a list or make a purchase or whatever it might be. You know, there's huge potential, really, you know, with this if you do it properly. You know, companies are starting to realise that mobile devices aren't just for fun, that they are actually a genuine business opportunity, and they're understanding that they're important to get people through the door. They're important to help make the sale. They're important to, you know, really make this work. So, you know, this is a great way for you to help these customers get an edge and make money. And obviously, you know, with sort of tight economic times, these companies want an edge. You know, they want to be one step ahead at all times. You know, they don't want to be behind the times. They don't want to be struggling. They want to, you know, make the most of sort of the business and the advertising that they have, and they can do that very easily with, you know, these QR codes. It's an excellent way for them to monetize their business. It's an excellent way for them to track their advertising. It's a great way to get an instant response on their advertising, which obviously is a good thing. It's a good way for them to, yeah, pretty much get on top of everything and, you know, profit from their advertising. You know, they can improve their return on investment from their advertising. So instead of them, you know, instead of them just getting some response, they get a much higher response. It's that instant response that's very, very important. And there's a lot of opportunities for you to market QR codes to local companies for profit. You know, think about the companies in your area. How many restaurants could put a QR code on their advertising? Just think about that. What if they put an advert on a QR code on their advertising that entitled people to a 20% discount if they came in and showed the coupon on their mobile phone? How many people do you think they'll get through the door then? I imagine it'd be quite good. You know, you see a big increase in people coming in because people love to see coupons. You know, people love coupons. They love spending money with them. And you know, it's going to help get people through the door. What about a motor mechanic who could use QR codes to, again, take people to reviews of his service, give them a discount or special offer? You know, maybe this week he's having a deal on clutches or transmission or whatever it might be. You know, there's big potential here. You know, you could have a QR code that takes people through to a website where they can go and see the special offers that you're offering them. You know, what special offers have you got on? You know, what deals are you doing this week? And people can come through and see it, make a purchase online even. Or what if they could, you know, use the QR codes to get a discount, or watch a video to educate people on your business. For example, if I'm I don't know, if I'm a drain cleaner, I might use the QR code to take people through so they can see samples of our work and something like that. But there's big potential here, and it's really only just starting to be sort of dealt with by people. You know, marketers are only just starting to look at this. So if you're sitting on the fence at the moment thinking, well, I don't know whether I want to do this, is it something that I can actually make money from, then you need to get off the fence, because it is something you can make a good amount of money from. There's a lot of potential here. A lot of these companies are going to be very willing to basically, you know, give you money to help them improve the effectiveness of their advertising through QR codes. QR codes are very effective and very powerful, and I think you will find that there's huge potential for you offline with these. And if you grasp the bull by the horns and sort of take it on board, you're going to do well with them. You know, there's big potential. As I said, people are only just starting to scratch the surface of QR codes, even after all these years.